Hello, Jeremy.
Now, who are you going to highlight for us this morning from the board?
I'm going to talk about Charles Scoborio. Charles was really a stayer when he came to Warrnambool, and he's remembered now in Warrnambool by Scoborio Reserve in Otway Road and Scoborio Street off Boiling Down Road, and his best memorial, of course, are the Warrnambool Botanic Gardens, of which he was a curator for 40 years.
Oh, right, okay. Which is why you probably know a lot about him with your association with the garden,
I
yes?
do have a particular interest in him.
Where do we start with his story then?
Well, his picture on the Pioneer Board is of a vital young man with dark hair and beard, and this was in 1857, really the year that he came to Warrnambool, and almost 50 years on, we have a picture of a tall, straight man with a white beard watering the gardens. So we've got the beginning and the end,
right.
in photographs of Charles Scoborio. He arrived with his wife Elizabeth and his 2-year-old son Thomas, and that was in 57. They'd sailed from Plymouth to Melbourne on the Appleton.
Right.
And it took 13 weeks, and then almost immediately straight on to Warrnambool on the Victoria. So he was a very direct immigrant to Warrnambool.
Right.
When he got here first, he worked for Briggs and Napthine, who were drapers, and we've got a Napthine on the Pioneers Board as well. He lived in Caroit Street, opposite the Church of England, and he advertised he would lay out gardens.
Oh, okay.
In a couple of years later, he was appointed curator of the old Warrnambool Botanic Gardens. They were not suitable as a site. They were down behind where the cemetery is now. Soil was, a lot of it was just sandstone, and the wind was pretty destructive. So he resigned that job with a broken heart, I think you'd say, giving up in 1865. And then for a couple of years he worked with gardens around the place. He at one stage was at Mr Aitken's property at Ellerslie, which is in Warrnambool here, and later for Joseph Ware at Minger. So his influence was reasonably extensive. Now, when the council decided they needed a new site for the gardens, it was Scoborio, one of the people who was asked to select the site. And although he didn't immediately apply for the curatorship, he was reappointed in 1872. So from there on, his main work was the gardens. I'd like to go a bit further back on his origins, because I think this is quite interesting. He came from Cornwell, and the name Scoborio for many years was thought to be of Italian origin. So, maybe he arrived off a boat and settled in Cornwall. What his origins were not known, but even his family, his later family descendants, believed that he was of Italian origin. He wasn't. Scoborio is a very old Cornish name, goes back many, many years. And even more interestingly, his family were from the gardening tradition. His grandfather was a gardener in Cornwall. It was Helligan Estate. And today, that's known as the Lost Garden of Helligan. It's quite a popular spot for visiting. Having been a wonderful garden, it declined and has now been reinstated. And so Charles goes back his origin to Helligan, and he's also said to have studied at under Dr. Linley in the Royal Horticultural School. So he had a pretty impeccable background as far as his qualifications were concerned.
Where was that Helligan Garden, sorry?
That's in Cornwall, not far from Mevagissey.
Right, okay.
So, it's quite not that far from the Eden project, around that area.
Okay.
Well, coming back to Warrnambool, he cleared the site, And he built rockeries, some of them from the rocks that he was clearing on the site. And he worked in that area after Guilfoyle's plan was implemented from 1877. He was looking to work towards that plan. He did a marvellous job, and he worked very hard at it. And it wasn't all he had to do either. His role as curator, with one person to help on a part-time basis, he was also responsible for planting street trees.
Right.
For also planting grass on the hummocks to stabilise the hummocks. He was responsible for the Friendly Society's park, and all of this with a council who was pretty reluctant to spend money, so he was always petitioning for £1 or £2 here for plants, or could he employ a man short term for 4 shillings a day, and it was not easy to get money. Never has been.
So much of what Warrnambool's early plantings then would have been due to him, or he would have been...
Yes,
yeah,
right. Certainly the Norfolk Island pines in Raglan Parade, and the trees in Hennis Street, the trees down Patobe Road. There was a great period of planting those about 1903, and that was in the very late years of his life, but he was very much involved in that at that time.
Right, wow.
His other interests, not only with the gardens, he was a member of the Volunteer Corps for about 20 years, and in that he had the role of drum major, and a figure 6 foot tall with a big white beard, I think would have been most impressive leading the band in those days.
Yes, yes.
Also a member of the Friendly Society for many, many years, and the Horticultural Society, so he contributed widely and long to Warrnambool. His wife Elizabeth died in 1906, which was the year Charles retired, and he died in 1912 at the age of 85. He's buried in the Warrnambool Cemetery, and in fact his wife's grave was marked, obviously, he was there to mark it. There was no indication of his grave, but the Friends of the Gardens did arrange for a tablet to be put on commemorating the site of his burial.
Right, yeah.
In his obituary, he was described as a man of sterling character. Would rather like to be described as of sterling character.
Yes. And is there any memorial to him in the gardens as well, or any?
Not as such, except the gardens themselves.
Right? Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. And many other plantings around town as well, I suppose, which probably all serve as memorials to some degree. Yeah.
Certainly, in many ways, I would say that the Warrnambool Botanic Gardens are certainly his great legacy, but they're also the legacy of all those that followed and maintained them. So we've got a lovely ongoing.
Yes.
Guilfoyle garden there.
Yeah, indeed. Lovely. Pat, thank you very much. Very nice to hear some of his story this morning.
Thank you.